It's 7 p.m. Thursday, September 26th, here in Seoul.
Coming up on News Center tonight. The head of UNESCO says the UN body fully supports President Moon Jae-in's proposal to have the DMZ listed as a World Heritage Site. The remark came during talks with South Korea's foreign minister on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly.
South Korea confirms a 7th case of African swine fever, prompting authorities to extend a movement ban on all pigs nationwide.
South Korea bans the distribution of the heartburn medicine Zantac and hundreds of other ranitidine-based drugs after finding a cancer-causing chemical in those medications.
And following the launch of a formal impeachment inquiry against U.S. President Donald Trump, Democrats jump on a transcript of a phone call where Trump seemed to urge the Ukrainian president to dig dirt on his potential 2020 rival, Joe Biden. News Center begins now. Good evening and welcome to Arirang News Center. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm No Adam.
And I'm Hyundai, and it's great to have you with us. UNESCO's chief expressed support to South Korea's initiative of listing the DMZ, dividing the two Koreas, as a World Heritage Site.
The claim follows President Moon Jae-in's address to the UN, in which he proposed turning the heavily fortified DMZ into an international zone of peace. Oh Jeong-eun has our top story.
UNESCO expressed support for South Korea's goal of turning the inter-Korean demilitarized zone into a peace zone. South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa met with Audrey Azoulay, the Director General of UNESCO, on Wednesday in New York on the sidelines of the ongoing UN General Assembly. Azoulay welcomed President Moon Jae-in's idea of listing the DMZ jointly with North Korea as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It was one of the action plans President Moon laid out in a keynote speech at the UN General Assembly on Tuesday to transform the DMZ into a global peace zone. Azoulay stressed that UNESCO will also join in the efforts, calling the goal a grand initiative. Kang and Azoulay also discussed the cooperation between South Korea and UNESCO on Korean Peninsula issues, education, and ethical standards in using artificial intelligence. Seoul's top diplomat also met with David Beasley, the executive director of the World Food Program. They agreed to expand their joint efforts to overcome humanitarian crises faced by the most vulnerable in the world, including women, children, and refugees. Kang and Beasley shared opinions on the South Korea WFP cooperation on achieving the so-called Zero Hunger Initiative, food assistance to developing countries, and humanitarian assistance to North Korea. Oh Jeong-eun, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe highlighted the importance of trilateral security cooperation between Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington during their summit in New York. Much attention had been drawn to what the two would discuss with regards to regional security. And the re-emphasis on trilateral security cooperation is widely believed to be aimed at Seoul's decision to terminate its military intelligence sharing pact with Tokyo. Seoul chose to withdraw from the pact in August amid Japan's trade curbs against South Korea. Trump and Abe also discussed a range of issues during their summit, including North Korea, Iran, and bilateral trade. The Blue House says there's a strong chance that North Korea's Kim Jong-un might make an unprecedented visit to the South in November for an ASEAN forum in Busan. The remark follows a similar statement made by South Korea's intelligence agency a few days ago. The possible visit, though, would likely depend on the success of talks between the North and the U.S. Our Shin Se-min has more.
South Korea's presidential office on the same page as the nation's intelligence agency that North Korea's Kim Jong-un may in fact visit South Korea for the ASEAN Special Summit in the port city of Busan in November. The backdrop of that, the ongoing discussions between North Korea and the U.S. and between the two Koreas, as well as the National Intelligence Service's claim this week that said the North's leader Kim Jong-un could cross the border again. The prospective nuclear talks between Pyongyang and Washington are feeding the presidential office's optimism, but there may need to be talks between the two Koreas in order to make that trip actually happen. Looking back at President Moon's brief trip to New York and meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump, the presidential office reportedly sees the restarting of the Korean peace process as a major outcome.
제3차 북미 정상회담이 열린다면 아마도 한반도의 비핵화의 새로운 질서가 만들어지는 아주 세계사적인 대전환 이렇게 업적이 될 것이라고 믿습니다.
In addition, President Moon added to the peace blueprint during his keynote speech at the UN General Assembly with his plan to turn one of the most heavily guarded regions in the world into a global peace zone.
유엔과 모든 회원국들에게 한반도의 허리를 가로지르는 비무장지대를 국제평화지대로 만들자는 제안을 하고자 합니다.
One shortfall in what was generally seen as a fruitful trip was the lack of progress in relations with Japan. The presidential office reportedly cited the ongoing under-the-table talks with Japan have yet to lead anywhere. So it looks like the embittered relations between the two neighbors won't go away for the time being. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, New York.
And staying in New York, other than North Korea, various other global issues were also raised and debated by the world leaders at the 2019 UN General Assembly this week. For a brief recap, here's our Lee Ji-won.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres opened the UN General Assembly debate on Tuesday, and one of the concerns he raised was the conflict in the Middle East. He denounced the recent attacks on Saudi Arabia's oil facilities as totally unacceptable and cautioned that the strikes had raised the possibility of military confrontation in the Gulf. Such concerns were also raised by many world leaders, including U.S. President Donald Trump.
In response to Iran's recent attack on Saudi Arabian oil facilities, we just imposed the highest level of sanctions on Iran's central bank and sovereign wealth fund. As long as Iran's menacing behavior continues, sanctions will not be lifted. They will be tightened.
To this, Iran's president stood firm, saying that national dignity, pride, and strength is all they can rely on.
The security of the region shall be provided when American troops pull out. Security shall not be supplied with American weapons and intervention. On behalf of my nation and state, I would like to announce that our response to any negotiation under sanctions is no.
And leaders of other signatories and stakeholders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, urged both sides to resolve the issue through dialogue. Concerns on the power game between the U.S. and China were also raised.
I fear the possibility of a great fracture, the world splitting in two, with the two largest economies on Earth creating two separate and competing worlds, which with their own dominant currency, trade and financial rules, their own internet and artificial intelligence capacities, and their own zero-sum geopolitical and military strategies.
And President Trump once again blasted China for its currency manipulation and forced technology transfers. But there were not just these political issues. Discussions on climate change were also brought up by world leaders. Germany's Foreign Minister Heiko Maas urged countries that the issue is a matter of war and peace and a question of the survival of humanity. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
South Korea has confirmed its 7th case of African swine fever, prompting authorities to extend a movement ban on pigs nationwide. The disease continues to spread in the northern parts of the country near the DMZ. It's not harmful to humans, but is fatal to pigs, putting pork supplies at risk. Our Kim Jae-hee has the latest.
The 7th case of African swine fever has been confirmed in a farm on Seongmo-do Island in Gangwon County in Incheon, some 80 kilometers west of Seoul on Thursday. The farm housed only 2 pigs and was closed to the public at the time African swine fever was confirmed, raising questions over how the disease found its way there. This marks the 3rd of 7 confirmed African swine fever cases to originate in Gangwon County. The South Korean government is on high alert. The entire province of Gyeonggi-do, Incheon, and Gangwon-do province are currently under quarantine. The government has also decided to prohibit the possible movement of livestock in Gyeonggi-do province to other regions. A nationwide standstill on all pig farms, feed factories, and slaughterhouses was supposed to be lifted as of 12 p.m. Thursday, but has been extended for another 48 hours. Incheon said it will cull pigs within 3 kilometers of the infected farms, which amounts to around 1/5 of the entire pig population in Incheon. Public gatherings such as festivals have also been called off. It's not clear how the disease entered South Korea, but North Korea reported its own outbreak back in May, so authorities are inspecting inter-Korean waterways and issuing strict quarantine orders on them, as well as 14 cities and counties near North Korea. Meanwhile, South Korea's local news agency Yonhap reported that no cases of African swine fever were found in some 1,000 wild boars across the nation. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News, Incheon.
South Korea and the US kicked off 2-day biannual defense talks today on regional security and other pending alliance issues, including the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula and the transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul. Seoul's defense ministry says the 16th Korea-US Integrated Defense Dialogue, or KIDD, is being headed by South Korea's Deputy Minister for National Defense Policy, Jeong Eun-bo, and his American counterpart, Heino Klink. During the previous round of talks in Washington in April, the two sides reaffirmed their alliance and said the Inter-Korean Comprehensive Military Agreement signed last September contributed to alleviating tensions on the peninsula. South Korea has appointed Jeong Eun-bo as Seoul's new chief negotiator for defense cost-sharing talks with the US. He had long served at South Korea's finance ministry and was vice chairman of the Financial Services Commission. It's rare for Seoul to select someone from the financial realm to lead such negotiations. Previously, the talks were led by officials from the foreign or defense ministries. This is being seen as Seoul's intention to send someone who is strong with numbers and who will not easily back down in the face of US demands. Washington wants Seoul to pay more to station US troops in South Korea. The South Korean government has banned the production and sale of some heartburn medicines over concerns they could contain carcinogens. Now, Choi Si-young has the details.
The Ministry of Food and Drug Safety said Thursday that it's found higher levels of cancer-causing compounds in stomach medicines sold under the trade name Zantac, among others. Its generic name is ranitidine, and it's used to reduce stomach acid production and treat peptic ulcer disease. The ministry has banned production and sale of 269 of the drugs. The ban affects about 1.45 million patients who the ministry says can ask their doctor for a substitute that will be free of charge the first time. They can also refund or exchange medicine they've already purchased. More information is available online. Some health experts are saying the ministry was too slow to ban the drugs, having dismissed the cancer concerns raised by the health authorities in the US and Europe earlier this month, only to reverse its decision. The health ministry plans to launch a committee to study the long-term side effects of ranitidine on the human body. Choi Si-young, Arirang News.
LG Economic Research Institute expects South Korea's economic growth rate to drop further next year to 1.8%. In a report Thursday, it also revised down this year's forecast to 2% from the previous 2.3% in April. It blamed sluggish exports, especially in semiconductors, forecasting the global economic slowdown and the US-China trade war to continue into next year. It said this will hurt the domestic economy, causing companies to reduce investment and employment. Slower growth next year is also forecast by Morgan Stanley and South Korea's Institute for the Future of State. South Korea and Bulgaria have agreed to enhance cooperation in future industries, including renewable energy and electric car batteries. After holding talks in Seoul earlier today, Prime Ministers Lee Nak-yeon and Boyko Borisov said in a joint press conference that the two sides will increase efforts to boost trade and investment. Through such partnerships, they hope to create jobs and mutually develop their economies. Borisov also asked for active investment from Korean companies, including Samsung Electronics and Hyundai Motor. The Bulgarian Prime Minister is expected to discuss these issues in length when he sits down with President Moon Jae-in tomorrow. Hyundai Motor Company says it has officially launched a joint venture with Swiss hydrogen energy company H2 Energy. The venture, called Hyundai Hydrogen Mobility, aims to sell around 1,600 hydrogen fuel cell-powered trucks by 2025, with Hyundai providing the trucks and H2 Energy providing technical and consulting solutions. The South Korean carmaker says the joint venture will help its hydrogen energy business expand into the European market, including Germany and Norway. President Trump claims his administration might reach a trade deal with China sooner than expected. Speaking to reporters in New York on Wednesday after signing a trade deal with Japan, Trump said Beijing very badly wants a deal and that it's already making big agricultural purchases from the U.S., including beef and pork. U.S. stocks ended higher on Wednesday after falling for 3 days, with Trump's comments on the U.S.-China trade deal offsetting concerns about a congressional impeachment inquiry against him, as well as weakening global economic data. The US and Japan are locked in separate trade wars, but they've signed a new bilateral trade deal under which Japan will open its market to American agricultural goods worth billions of dollars. Kim Yo-sun reports.
Japan has agreed to open up its market to $7 billion worth of American agricultural products. U.S. President Donald Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe announced the initial details of an emerging trade deal between the two countries on Wednesday in New York on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. Explaining the Japanese tariffs will now be significantly lower or eliminated for U.S. products, President Trump stressed the deal will greatly help American farmers.
Under the market access agreement that we're announcing today, Japan will open new markets to approximately $7 billion in American agricultural products. Japanese tariffs will now be significantly lower or eliminated entirely for U.S. beef, pork, wheat, cheese, corn, wine, and so much more. This is a huge victory for America's farmers, ranchers, and growers, and that's very important to me.
Nearly 90% of U.S. food and agricultural products will receive duty-free or reduced tariff access to Japan, while many products that are gaining new access, including wine and cheese, will face tariffs that phase out over several years. Abe described the deal a win-win for both sides.
One of the highlights of this new agreement is that under this agreement, we together will be able to bring benefits to everyone in Japan as well as in the United States, namely consumers, producers, and workers.
Following the signing ceremony between the two leaders, the U.S. Trade Representative's office explained that automobiles were not included in the agreement, as Tokyo wanted further discussion on the matter. It also said a wide range of Japanese industrial goods, from machine tools to musical instruments, will see reduced or eliminated tariffs in the U.S. market. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
The transcript of a controversial phone call between US President Donald Trump and his Ukrainian counterpart has been released by the White House. Another key document, a whistleblower complaint on the president's communications with Ukraine, is also set to be declassified soon. The reports have been central to the Democrats' move to impeach the US leader. Oh Soo-young has more.
US President Donald Trump's acting intelligence chief will be questioned by lawmakers on Thursday over how the administration dealt with a whistleblower complaint about Trump's communications with Ukraine. Joseph Maguire is expected to testify to the House of Representatives Intelligence Committee on why the complaint was not shared with Congress as required by law and when it was deemed urgent and credible. The whistleblower report has been central to the Democrats' call to impeach Trump over presidential misconduct and is expected to be declassified as early as Thursday morning, according to US media. This comes after a White House log of a phone call in July was released on Wednesday, in which Trump asked President Volodymyr Zelensky to look into former Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter's involvement with Burisma Holdings, a private Ukrainian gas firm. Democrats claim Trump's call was to solicit a foreign leader to dig up dirt on a potential rival in the 2020 presidential election. They also expressed concerns about why Trump reportedly decided to withhold hundreds of millions of dollars in military aid to Ukraine a week before he spoke with Zelensky. Trump, however, maintains that the call was perfect and there was no quid pro quo. With the latest allegations against President Trump, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced Wednesday that the Democrats were launching an official inquiry into impeaching the president.
And this week, the president has admitted to asking the president of Ukraine to take actions which would benefit him politically. The actions of the Trump presidency revealed the dishonorable fact of the president's betrayal of his oath of office, betrayal of our national security, and betrayal of the integrity of our elections. Therefore, today, I'm announcing the House of Representatives moving forward with an official impeachment inquiry.
Trump said the Democrats' latest efforts amount to nothing more than a hoax. Speaking to reporters alongside Trump in New York, Zelensky said no one can put pressure on him because he's the president of an independent state. Zelensky also added that he didn't pressure any prosecutors or other officials in Ukraine about looking into the Bidens. 오수영 Arirang News.
Bulgarian economist Kristalina Georgieva was officially named on Wednesday as the next head of the International Monetary Fund. The former World Bank CEO is the second woman and the first person from an emerging market economy to lead the 189-member institution. The IMF waived its age limit of 65 just one day before the deadline for candidate recommendations to allow the 66-year-old's nomination. Georgieva is to take up her position starting on October 1st, replacing Christine Lagarde, who is expected to take over the European Central Bank later this year. Seoul is reaching out to Pyongyang to try to send a cheering squad for next month's World Cup qualifier match between the two countries. An official from South Korea's Unification Ministry said Thursday that it's using various channels of communication, including the Asian Football Confederation. The official said specific details regarding the matter, such as the squad size, are expected to be dealt with in accordance to North Korea's response. The move comes days after South Korea's football governing body said it was informed by the AFC that the North had reaffirmed plans to host the second round of Group H qualification match for the 2022 FIFA World Cup, scheduled to take place on October 15th. Young South Korean football star Lee Gangin has scored his debut goal for his Spanish club Valencia in his first start for the team. Lee, who won the Golden Ball at this year's Under-20 World Cup, netted Valencia's third goal against Getafe in Wednesday night's La Liga match. Despite drawing 3-3 in the end, the 18-year-old's goal left a big impression on the Valencia fans, as it makes him the youngest foreign scorer in the Spanish club's history. He also becomes just the second South Korean player to score in La Liga after Park Ju-young. There are cultural events lined up all over Korea now that the weather is cooling off. One of them is down south in the beautiful Suncheon Bay, the Suncheonman International Orchestra Festival. 5 concerts in total are scheduled through next Monday. Our Lee Min-sun went to the first one and files this report.
The 2019 Suncheonman International Orchestra Festival kicked off on Wednesday night in Suncheon Bay in South Korea's Jeollanam-do province. Now in its 4th year, the festival presents a series of classical music performances by some 400 musicians and 5 orchestras from around the world. The opening concert was presented by South Korean maestro Jeong Myung-hoon and pianist Im Dong-hyuk, playing globally loved pieces by Tchaikovsky and Beethoven.
And this beautiful park with a wonderful setting that opens the possibility for us classical musicians to play for a wider audience. And so we are basically messengers of music, and so we are very happy when we are able to especially play for people who would normally not be able to go to concerts.
Local residents and visitors from across the country filled up some 3,000 seats, most of which were laid on free of charge. To make the festival appealing to those unfamiliar with classical music, the performances include well-known tunes that have appeared in movies and on TV. The concerts are held in an outdoor garden surrounded by flowers, trees, and water. The Suncheon Bay National Garden, where the stage has been set up for the concert, is one of the 5 biggest wetlands in the world and is a popular tourist destination in South Korea, especially during the autumn season. The garden is 1.1 million square kilometers in size and contains various kinds of plants and trees arranged in unique garden styles from different countries.
Classical music festivals held in other cities are for classical music lovers. Classical music is typically considered difficult to access, so we made our program easier to enjoy without having any background knowledge. The concerts are also performed on an outdoor stage, so it's easier to access than those held at a formal concert hall.
The 6-day festival will present 5 performances in a bid to make classical music a pleasant addition to people's daily lives. 이민선, Arirang News, Suncheon.
And here in Seoul, a global music festival is underway. It's in Korea's home for indie music and youth culture, the university neighborhood of Hongdae. Clubs and concert halls throughout the area will be putting on shows through this Sunday. Our Jongun has the story.
Asia's trendiest indie music festival is now in town. Known as the Chandari Festa, the festival provides a platform for emerging artists from all over the world, playing a range of musical styles from rock to electronica. The annual event has gotten bigger every year since it began in 2012, and this year, more than 100 groups of musicians from 20 countries will perform to indie music lovers. The festival will take place simultaneously at several live clubs and concert halls around the Hongdae area. And this French musician who already performed in Busan a few days ago is looking forward to meeting Korean indie music lovers.
The first show that we played, the only show that we played, was really welcoming, and the energy that was given by the audience was really different from what we experience in France sometimes.
However, just performing in front of the audience is not the only reason these artists are here. Some musicians will be showcasing what they've got to music industry professionals to help them expand their career to other global markets.
A really interesting event because it's both a music market, like a buying and selling place, but also a really amazing music festival. Yeah, and I know a lot of the presenters that were here last year found some great talent. There's lots of tours, so hopefully that continues, and hopefully I can be a part of making something else happen.
The industry professionals who has taken 9 Korean artists and bands to perform in Australia over the past few years says he is always looking for someone unique and something cultural.
Trying to find something that feels unique, something that feels like you don't see it every day, something that gets I generally go for quite high energy stuff and stuff that gets a crowd going, but also something that feels uniquely Korean as well.
For the past few years, Chandari Festa has produced some up-and-coming music stars, and the platform gives many young musicians a chance to further their music careers. The Global Music Festival runs until Sunday in the Hongdae area of Seoul. Jongun, Arirang News.
South Korea's consumer sentiment rose in September after 4 straight months of decline. According to the Bank of Korea, the consumer sentiment index came to 96.9 for this month, up more than 4 points from August. The central bank attributed the rise to higher stock prices and the government's expansionary economic policies. But the figure is still below 100, meaning there are more pessimists than optimists about the local economy. LG Electronics is apparently America's favorite appliance maker based on customer satisfaction. LG has topped the US household appliance and electronics report for this year, scoring 82 out of 100. Published by the American Customer Satisfaction Index, the report measures customer satisfaction with over 400 companies by interviewing roughly 300,000 American consumers every year. LG not only maintained a stable score from last year, but was also highly praised for its line of refrigerators. Samsung Electronics second with a score of 80, tied with Germans Bosch and US manufacturer Whirlpool. Teen Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg has been named as one of the winners of the 2019 Right Livelihood Award, often called an alternative Nobel Prize. According to the Right Livelihood Award Foundation on Wednesday, Thunberg won the award for, quote, inspiring and amplifying political demands for urgent climate action reflecting scientific facts. She will receive her award in Stockholm in December, along with a cash prize of $103,000. Earlier at the UN Climate Action Summit in New York on Monday, she gave a fiery speech shaming world leaders for failing to stop climate change. Sandra, a 33-year-old orangutan that was legally ruled to not be an animal but a non-human person with rights, will leave Buenos Aires and head to a sanctuary in Florida that is much better suited to her needs. She was born in a zoo in Germany, was moved to Argentina 25 years ago, and has lived most of her life in a basketball court-sized cell in Buenos Aires. The conditions she'd been kept in sparked protests from animal rights groups and led to a landmark court ruling in 2014 that she was entitled to some of the legal rights enjoyed by humans.
It was cloudy for most regions today, while Jeju has been receiving some showers. Tomorrow, more areas are expected to be drenched with rain.
So, pack your umbrellas. For more details, let's turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Now, by tomorrow, rain clouds will extend to other areas in the country, especially in the south. Now, the capital will also be overcast with some higher than average daytime temperature readings. And in the meantime, up to 60 millimeters of precipitation is expected to fall on the southern coast of Gyeongsangnam-do province and Jeju Island, whereas the rest of the southern provinces will see lighter showers of up to 40 millimeters of precipitation. And the rain in the south is expected to last through the weekend, while Seoul will have mild conditions with the daily temperature gap of almost 10 degrees Celsius. Now, sunny spells are also in the forecast for next week, with temperature expected to continue dropping a couple of more notches in the morning. And checking out the ratings for tomorrow, we will have a repeat of today's conditions, with Seoul waking up to 18 degrees Celsius, while Busan and Jeju begins in the low 20s. And it's either going to be gray or raining across the peninsula during the day tomorrow, with Seoul topping out to 26 degrees, while Daegu, Gyeongju, and Busan hitting up to 24 degrees Celsius. And now I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That will wrap it up for today's Arirang News Center. Thank you, as always, for watching.
Keep it tuned to Arirang for news in depth coming up next.